Well, yeah, and my point too is that there are things that can happen that are bad that aren't necessarily these great political overthrow things. There are things that can happen, like many difficult times that have come that did not usher in the coming of the Lord.
Right. It's subdued strength that men should have. I think that's also like what we're seeing today is a society of people who, if everything hits the fan tomorrow, and we're all like living off the land and stuff, like vast majority of people aren't making it.
How much first aid do you really know? You know what I mean? If you cut your toe off, how do you know? You know, if you broke your arm, what would you do? And it's like, I would cry. That's my first step is cry. Then
say goodbye to my loved ones.
God is making up the difference for you, because when he looks at you, he sees Jesus. He sees Jesus.
It was that moment, I'll never forget it, that I realized, no, just because my parents go to church or whatever's going on, there has to be something that happens personally between me and Christ.
I determined that the best thing to do to combat the way that the world is going is to bring people to the Lord.
Yeah, it's a Christian answer. Like, I know a lot of people say we need political reform, and yeah, that needs to happen, but that's so far up the tree. Like the first tree, in seed form, it's people need a genuine conversion. Like they need to come to know the Lord, and then through discipling all these new believers, if that were to happen, you don't have to worry so much about political reform, because what's happening in politics is a result of what the people have voted for at some point. Like, it may have gone beyond what they voted for because politicians don't do it, but the leash of what is being allowed has to do with people's moral values. People don't have values anymore.
I think the second part of that is taking care of your physical self and being ready. You know what I mean? Like, my old man, he knows like firearms. He's good with it. He knows, like, you know, he's good at, I think he used to shoot archery too.
Yeah. If everybody was familiar with guns, like you're saying, there would not be a gun control debate, because half of what they espouse is why they need gun control is based off of fear and lack of education as to how firearms work.
Yep.
So.
Yep, definitely. Yep. What happened is COVID happened, and then the government basically turned on us, which we all knew that they could and would if given the opportunity, and then they kind of did.
Yep.
And then we were like, ooh, we could potentially have no food right now. So then we started doing a garden.
Mm-hmm.
And Sheila and I worked the garden for a summer, and then by August we were just like we'll just succumb to the overlords.
Yeah.
And then after that, I thought, well, you know what? Another one that's really important is physical health, and that's when I started taking my physical health more seriously. I'd kind of been doing that, but, you know, just being prepared to, like, hike 20 miles in the woods. Like, you are not prepared to hike 20 miles in the woods, I promise you. You know, this life of, you know, couch surfing and that kind of thing is so bad for us in these jobs where we're sitting in chairs staring at blue lights. It's like, that's so bad for us, dude. And I'll tell you, like, it's just not going to be good if we ever had to do something like, if you, like, not even saying government overthrow, but, like, if you ever just, your car breaks down and you're in the middle of nowhere and you have to walk, you're going to be like, why is this happening to me? You know?
Yeah. Well, that's why part of the Constitution, you know, in the amendment, it talks about a well-regulated militia. And I don't want to throw shade at anybody, but there are some militias I know of going on. But if I could speak matter-of-factly on them, you go and look at who's in a militia, and it's like these guys, what you're talking about, they're couch potatoes. And they're practicing shooting guns, but listen, a well-regulated militia, that's not what they had in mind. What they had in mind was people who are trained to be soldiers, but as civilians who are athletic. You know, they're fit. Maybe not necessarily athletic, but people
prepared.
Prepared. And man, like, yeah, you could shoot at a distance, but what if you have to hike a mile? Like what you're saying, and that is one of the if you're, because we were talking about initially that there needs to be the gospel is the answer, but in a practical way, if we're preparing for hard times or tyranny, then you have to be in shape. Like you have to, know how to take care of yourself.
Well, yeah, and my point too is that there are things that can happen that are bad that aren't necessarily these great political overthrow things. There are things that can happen like your car breaks down, or you could potentially
everyday life.
Yeah, have everyday life, or we could have some kind of supply chain issue that would potentially cause us to have a food shortage. I mean, there's been many difficult times that have come that did not usher in the coming of the Lord.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so
the more inept you are, or the more like out of shape you are in those things, the more the people will naturally become dependent upon the government,
on the systems. Yeah.
And that in of itself creates a monster in the government, because the more dependent the people are, the bigger they get, and then it just comes out of control.
Right.
So it's actually a self-perpetuating problem that people don't realize. Like, no, you and your lifestyle, you are contributing to big government.
You ever listen to Cameron Haynes?
No, I haven't.
Do you know who he is? He's basically a bow hunter that does like he does ultra marathons, and he has a podcast, and but he, guys like him, they're going to be fine, because they can always go into places where no man has ever gone before and find food, you know what I mean, and take care of themselves and provide for themselves. But that ain't me. Like I don't have a problem with hunting. I definitely, it's not in me. Like I can't kill an animal. Yeah. But now if it was between my family starving and that kind of thing, then it'd be them or me.
Yeah.
Then it would be, that would be the thing. But I just can't. I go, okay, well, I'm going to go out and find a way to earn money so I can buy the food. Let somebody else do the killing. Do you know what I mean? Like, or be a vegetarian or whatever. I could live as a vegetarian. I definitely like, I don't necessarily need to eat meat, but I think, but in those scenarios, I would be like way behind in terms of skill level, right? So I know, like, even with fishing, like I've seen fishermen who go out catching.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? I've never been. I can't do it myself. I can catch when I go with them because they've done all the work and stuff like that. But I'm not prepared in the sense of the word to survive. I'm depending on that system as well. So I have an interest in it not collapsing on its own, because I'm kind of you know what I mean. I'm dependent on that as well. So yeah, I think there's something to be said for a Christian to be prepared, being financially astute, or being physically conditioned, or being prepared to garden, or which you garden, right? Are you?
Yeah, yep.
Been doing it for years.
Yep. Well, I've been doing it since we moved at our current house, which was 2019, maybe 2018. But we've been there about 6 years.
You get good results from that and stuff. Do you think it gets you through the winter and stuff, or?
Yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't get us through the winter. Like, we have some stuff that keeps long, what is it? Squash, the winter kind of butternut squash. So that kind of stuff in the basement, like, it'll keep a long time. But the thing is, like, we don't double down and go into like canning things and preserving things. I just haven't delved into that. I don't have the time really. I wish I did, but so neither of us, Stacy or I, can do that. So we make enough that probably lasts us through the summer, maybe halfway through fall. But by the winter time, it's all basically gone except for the squash. And but my dream would be to put like a greenhouse in our backyard, and then I could grow all year round. It would have to be a pretty large greenhouse to make enough, but I still I take even a small building just to be able to have some stuff through the winter.
Yeah, you must, and I think people have a knack for it, or they don't. It's kind of like hunting. Like, I think certain people, they get it, and like the Cameron Haynes, he's just like, oh, I have a spiritual connection with the animal. Mm-hmm. I go out, I do this, I don't waste it, I treat it with dignity, I treat it, I cry when I kill something, that kind of thing. I think it's the same thing with gardening. It's like, you just get it and can do it, or everything you do turns to garbage. And I know a guy that grows potatoes in buckets all year long. Like this guy, it's like I look at it like he's almost not doing anything, and the Lord's just giving the guy potatoes. I'm sure there's more to it, you know what I mean? But it's like he grows peppers in buckets too, and it's just like
it's a good thing to do.
It's cool, but it was a part-time job to figure it out for me. I don't know what I'm doing, you know what I mean? I look at it like I'm just like a monkey trying to,
I've even just this past year, like I've delved into some of the more difficult things to grow. Like blueberries are surprisingly, at least if you live in Michigan, because you got to have them in containers because most of the time they do not last in the ground. So keeping them alive and then wintering them, pruning them and all that kind of stuff to keep them alive long enough for them to come back, in the spring. I've been doing that, and my first year I did it, not this past year, but the year before, I was unsuccessful. And then this year, I kept 2 of them alive. And so I'm going to slowly add to that. But then I've also got like a dwarf lemon tree.
Wow.
That I'm keeping alive, and hopefully that's going to come to fruition eventually. But the hardest challenge I've yet to, I say that. I did initially try, but I realized what I was doing wrong. And I think one of the biggest challenges to keep alive is coffee.
Interesting.
Coffee seeds, and especially growing them in a climate like Michigan. Even in some place like Texas would be difficult, but in Michigan it's very difficult, and you got to keep them indoors. But I've seen people do it, and they'll grow them in large containers, and they'll be huge trees in their house, and they'll get enough for a lot of coffee.
There's only one state that exports coffee in the country.
Which one?
It's Hawaii.
Hawaii. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's wild.
Very different taste, from what I understand, in Hawaii than the one that's grown. The climate and what part of the world coffee is grown, it changes the taste.
Yeah, I definitely would. Now that I know that, I want to try it.
Yeah.
And just see what it's like. Because I love good coffee, but never would have thought to grow a lemon tree or a coffee tree.
Yeah.
Or a coffee, what is it? It's a bush?
It's a berry. So they grow berries, and then the seed that's inside, you essentially roast the seed. But if you don't roast it, you don't do any of that kind of stuff, you can plant that seed. And actually, from what I've read, sometimes people, I can't get my hands on these, but if you can actually get the berries and then bury in the ground the whole berry, then it actually does really well there too. But I'm not going to go into all that goes into it, but what I can summarize it as saying, you have to somehow try your best to recreate the tropical volcanic climate that these typically grow in order to grow them. Like, you have to do that in the container. You have to buy all kinds of special stuff. But it's like a challenge. I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great. We did tomatoes, and in my mind, I thought the coolest way to do a tomato would be to grow vine tomatoes.
Oh, yeah.
That grow tall, because you can have more
going up
for a limited space, right? Because in my mind, it was like, if you're going to grow wide, then you're going to take up more room, and it's going to be harder to get. You're going to have to get on your hands and knees and pluck them out. So with the bush ones, what we did was we put up shelving, and we put buckets, and we grew the bush tomatoes in there so we can stand upright, because neither my wife nor I want to get down and crawl around on the ground.
Yeah.
And so for some people, that's the best part. Is getting down on the ground and picking stuff out. And like, I remember like when I was a kid, my mom is a total green thumb. Like, it did not leap from my mom to me. I did not get that gene, but I believe my grandmother had it. So maybe if my mom would have had daughters, I don't know how that works, but but for us, we take the lazy person's way out, and we're like, we want it to be upright so you can stand and pick stuff out. And my man, it went wild.
Oh, it just went everywhere.
It just went, yeah, and so then
kind of like strawberries. Strawberry runners will just go crazy.
Well, then you'd think, okay, so I did strawberries too, but I'll get to that. But so we did but I also had another section. I determined that the best tasting for sauces, the tomatoes were the, I can't remember the name of
Roma?
them. No, I don't want to. I don't think they were Romas. I think they were some Italian.
I know Romas are Italian.
So anyway, yeah, they were kind of shaped like Romas, but for some reason I want to say they were
a hybrid of that.
Do they grow on a vine?
Yes. Well, they can. There's two different types.
Okay.
There's determinate and indeterminate.
Okay, indeterminate is the one that goes up high.
No, you're putting me on the spot here.
Indeterminate means it's indeterminate how big they grow.
Right. Yep.
Right. So those. Okay, so they grew up.
Nobody hold me to that.
Yeah. We're going to get letters.
Yeah.
We'd love letters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Awesome.
Tell us how bad this is. I'd love it.
Yeah. So we did the tall ones, and then it was just uncontrollably wild. So I had heard, because I follow M.I. Gardner.
Yeah.
You know about that guy?
Yep. I follow him too.
What a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like all the best stuff you could want for gardening in Michigan.
Probably the most passionate people I've ever seen about gardening.
Oh, yeah. We had a issue one year where it got cold and it wrecked his apple trees, and he was like visibly upset.
Yeah. Yep.
He's like, this weather.
It's like if a plant dies, it's like a family member to him.
Yeah.
So
he was saying that when you do these tomatoes, that you want to make them be one vine. So any of the little offshoots you just cut, because what happens is all the effort for the plant goes into making the tomatoes that you get.
Yep. Instead, if you don't do that, it goes into making more offshoots, which takes a lot of energy. So you trim those off, and then it goes into the tomatoes.
Right. And so I was in an effort to do that. So you'd have to cut it, tie it, as it grows and grows and grows, and it's a lot of work. Yeah. So in retrospect, if I had to do it again, I would probably just do the buckets because they stay the size. You don't really have to mess with them too much. There's a little bit of trimming, that kind of thing. Just do the bush thing. But then, so the other thing we were doing. So what happened is we get to August, and both my wife and I are like, we needed to do the thing with the hose where you drill holes in a hose and you lay it out so that you can just go out and flip the water on.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
So instead what we had to do is go out every day and use the sprayer and water everything that way, as opposed to we needed to make systems. We needed to build systems to make the thing easier on us.
Yeah, if you're really going to go like big with a garden, that's better.
So the other thing we were doing is we were raising chickens and ducks. Okay, now when we got our house, my wife was like, she had this vision of a hobby farm.
Oh.
And in her mind, it was for fun.
Yeah.
And I saw work, of course, and a business. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, oh, you get,
profit.
You get all these eggs, or at least like, if not profit, then for us to have to profit from that, make the effort worth break even or whatever, like make the effort worth it for our family. Mm-hmm. So knowing what I know now from that, what I would do is I'd do the tomatoes. I might do green beans. But the thing about green beans is
we did that for the first time last year.
Well, they're great. They grow really well. You get a lot of them. But the thing is, we just don't eat that many. We don't eat green beans a lot. So with tomatoes, we do like nobody's business. You know what I mean? Yeah. We get so many.
We're the opposite.
Oh, really?
Our
you
family
just don't do tomatoes that much?
Like we do tomatoes, but so my daughter actually has come to like tomatoes over the past year. So I would do it just for her. But typically we would just give them away to people because we don't really eat tomatoes.
Oh, okay.
Now, if we could go the extra mile of like canning them or turning them into other things like sauces, we'd eat that all day long. It's just my wife doesn't want to do that and I don't have the time. Mm-hmm. So,
well, we had the ducks and the chickens, and so that is another instance where we did not have a great system for the winter.
Yeah.
Right. So we did regular chickens, which were layers or whatever, and then we also did meat chickens, and we had ducks. Okay, we had probably I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 ducks. And I'll tell you, man, if I had to do it again, I would definitely do ducks and tomatoes because those two things were like very simple and very easy to do. But you gotta, we would have to build systems because it just was so much work. Now with the ducks, they're filthy creatures.
More than chickens?
Way more than chickens. They'll just wallow in it. They don't care at all. You got to get mud boots so they'll just lay eggs wherever they are.
Oh,
they just drop eggs wherever. Whereas chickens will go into a specific spot and dump all their eggs in that one spot. But ducks just do them wherever. Yeah. And you get I think you get an egg like every other day or something like that with a duck.
With ducks. Okay.
But with chickens, it's like one a day. I don't know. But anyway, I loved having the farm eggs around. That was just a great thing. Yeah. But what we didn't have was, in Michigan, you really need systems to keep the water warm.
Yeah.
And keep them fed, or else you got to go out there every day and do it every day without fail. And if you're just not, that's my point about like, if you're just not that person, if you're like in your case, if you're gardening and you're about it, then you can go out and it's like you look forward to it. You know what I mean? But by August, we were just like, this is the worst thing. Why did we decide to do this? You know?
Yeah.
So especially in the winter, like with the ducks and chickens, we did it a couple winters, but they're pets at that point.
Yeah,
you have pet chickens.
If you're doing that stuff every day, that's a pet.
Well, and the other thing that happened was we'd get the meat birds and we'd raise the meat birds to where they were ready to be butchered. And I'm not a person who kills animals. Mm-hmm. All respect to, you know what I mean? It is what it is. People, I eat chicken. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not one of those people who's like, you're murdering the animal.
Yeah. But doing it yourself,
but doing it myself,
that's another hurdle.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. And we got some friends together and we said, hey, you guys want chicken? We have chickens. We'll raise them. You come help us trim them. Then we'll give you a handful of them. So we had like a station for one part of it, a station for another part of it, a couple like kids cleaning it, doing the whole thing. And it was just like a factory of cleaning up these meat birds, And I literally gave up meat for like a month.
Oh,
because
you saw the process.
Because I saw the process.
Oh man, yeah.
Because I was just like, I can't put a piece of meat in my mouth right now.
Okay, let me tell you this story, and for anybody that's squeamish, don't listen to this story. But I guess I could say growing up, I was in my late teens, but I was dating Stacy at the time. So she's now my wife, and she grew up on a farm, and I loved having the farm fresh eggs, and so I'd go out there and help her collect them and all that kind of stuff, and then I'd benefit from them like that. Like there were some times where I'd go and gather eggs, and then they'd clean them up and then make them like, within a few minutes from that. So it was great, and I enjoyed it. But there was one time where, so on this farm they also had horses. This one horse had like, and I can't remember the exact details, so don't hold me to it, but it was something like there was an abscess or something like that. There was an infection. So there was a vet that came out to drain this. And so there was all kinds of nasty like droppings and stuff that happened from this, right? And then I watched these free-range chickens come out and eat this stuff. And I'm like, I know what they're eating, and I could not eat any more eggs there. Like for at least a couple of weeks. I'm like, that has to go out of their system. Then I will eat eggs again.
Oh, that is exactly what would happen to me.
Yeah,
I can't handle the gross.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll eat the egg. I don't have a problem with other people doing it, but that's another part of it that I think about hunting. I tried hunting, and I was like, you can tell I'm not a hunter because I keep saying it like hunting, but you can tell I don't. You can tell it's not in me or whatever.
I love it. Like I'm a fan of it. I really am. And like if somebody invited me to go out hunting with them, I would. I want to say that, and this could be a cop out. I'm undecided on this. It could be that I'm using this as an excuse that I don't want to spend all the money that would be to get the hunting gear and the license and all that kind of stuff. But putting my money where my mouth is, like if everybody paid for that, I want to say, it's easy to say, to just say it's another thing to do it. I want to say I would be eager to go out and do it myself. But the difficulty I would see is in like gutting the animal.
Oh, that's where I was going with this.
That would be difficult for me.
So I watched a video on it.
I think
how
I
to
could
clear
do it, but...
how to clear and drag one out.
Yeah,
and I was like, I'm going. No, I'm not doing that.
I want to say if the right person was with me and was like explaining it to me as I went, like I think I could just like compartmentalize it, like push it out of my mind what it was actually, and like push it out the smell and all that kind of stuff, and just do it.
Yeah.
But I would not. Like I know guys who enjoyed that. I would not enjoy that.
No, I wouldn't enjoy it either.
So
Cameron Haynes said, like, when you're bow hunting elk, you are successful 10% of the time. So you go 10 years, you get one.
Oh man.
Yeah. He does better.
And see, I would feel. So I'm not making a judgment on people that do that, but for me, I wouldn't be able to justify the time. For me,
the time, yeah. Well, and I think it is really like a calling in that way. For him, it is. It just kind of feels like that's what he's going to do. He's always going to be a bow hunter, and that's all well and good. But yeah, to take and do the things that need to be done to drag that animal out of the woods, even a small white-tailed deer, I would just not be able to bring myself to do the things that need. You know what I mean? Like say if it's a matter of life and death, like my family won't be able to eat. Now fish, I don't find that.
I think in every man something will kick in if you need it.
If you need to, yeah. Well, with the fish, I don't feel the same. Like my grandfather on my father's side is a dyed-in-the-wool walleye man. And he'll.
Yeah, I love fishing.
He'll.
I don't get to do it much, but I love it.
Well, if I take a fish out of the water and I gotta club it to kill it, and then scrape it and clean it, doesn't bother me. There's a little blood, whatever, it's fine. But for some reason, with furry woodland creatures, even squirrels,
yeah.
Right, I think my brother-in-law has been a squirrel hunter in the past. I have some friends that are small game hunters and stuff like that. I couldn't shoot a fox and clean. I don't know. There's something. Maybe it's like I'm associating it with dogs and cats.
Yeah.
Or something. And fish are so like there's nothing to a fish. It's just like scales and idiocy.
No, I get it. The one like furry creature that I do not have a problem with eliminating, putting out of its misery, is a raccoon.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen enough damage done to my own property and even like my own food, garden, like all kinds of, and even stuff that is not even edible that they try to eat up by my house, like right next to my back door, that they'll come on and just start gnawing on. And it's not even food, but they ruin it. Like I've had so much property damage and resource damages from raccoons alone. Like a couple of years ago, I feel like me and my neighbor together have thinned them out to a serious degree. But man, like at one point we were severely overrun. Like I went through and I would set a trap, and the next day there was another raccoon in the trap. Like it was just constant. I went through about 30 raccoons in one summer because we were just overrun. And yeah.
Well, that's a pest.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And if it was like...
But I know people who would listen to what I just said and would be heartbroken that I ever ended a raccoon. Like, they would hate that.
Yeah, and I get that. But I would say, like, if it was a pest, and I wouldn't care as much about the garden as I would say, like, my personal pets, like my animals or something like that. Yeah, it's over.
I'll say this though, to that argument though about it being a pest and being different. I had a winter where the deer became pests at my property. Like they were destroying bushes. It was one of those years where like snow covered for months and never went away. And so they were desperate for food, but they were coming onto my property and destroying things. They literally became a pest problem.
Wow.
And I was really thinking in that moment, like, there should be something you can do. Like, I know for farmers, if you have to have, like, what are they called? One of the agents come out, and they have to, you have to prove enough damage is being done to your property in your farming agriculturally that it justifies just being able to shoot them on your property. And I think I think there should be way less regulations on that kind of stuff.
Well, I know that we had an opportunity to put these pie pans and put stuff in the pie pans like beans or something, and then you hang them on the fence, and then the jostling of the pie pan scares the deer away. Or I think you can also do like a fence within a fence.
Yeah, no. So I've done that with the fences.
There's techniques you can do to deter them.
You can also put Irish Spring soap out. That's what I do for my garden. What I have found is what works for 2 years will not work by the 3rd year.
Oh, really?
The deer eventually get used to it. From what in my experience,
they're learning.
Yeah, exactly.
They're adapting.
And another thing too is what I was just saying about the raccoons. The raccoons will literally come up and take the Irish Spring soap and eat it. And I don't know what's wrong with them, but I think half of them are diseased, and that's part of another reason why I don't care about eliminating them is because I think that they're inbred and all kinds of messed up.
They're trash rats.
I've seen them. like with maggots in them and like flies buzzing all around them and deranged and like drool coming out. I've seen that. And I've seen them staggering out, kind of looking like they're drunk in the middle of the daytime. And so it's not just like dangerous. They could have rabies for all I know. And so you're almost foolish not to eliminate them. In fact, somebody would probably listen to this and say, you should probably call somebody if you see them acting like that. But
yeah.
Why call somebody when I can take care of them?
Yeah, that's how we do things around here.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, yeah. That goes back to what we were originally talking about. Like, rather than being so dependent upon other things, other systems, organizations, you should be self-sufficient to some degree. And the more you can be, the better.
Well, we had pigs. I don't know if you have any experience with pigs.
Not personally, but like I knew a lot of people growing up that took care of pigs.
Well, you know how they say like stubborn as a pig? That's because
I mean, typically I hear stubborn as a mule, but
stubborn as a pig. Well, anyway,
yeah.
they earn their reputation because they are like they're really disagreeable beasts.
Yeah.
You know, and they're what we had 4. We had 2 and we were like I saw dollar signs and I was like, what if we had 4?
Yeah.
We already have 2.
Multiply the profit.
Basically, the principle is you have to have multiples because if you just have 1, then the 1 will not eat. They have to have 2 in order to contend for food, in order to fatten up, in order to go out. So we thought, what's better than 2? We're already taking care of 2. Let's take care of 4.
Yeah.
So we get 4. The 3 shun the 1.
Yeah.
They shun the 1.
Okay.
So then it loses it all. It's not gaining weight. It's not flourishing. It's not,
They're keeping the other one from eating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the runt, right?
Yep.
That's because they're little jerks.
Yeah.
They're little buttheads.
Survival of the fittest in the animal kingdom. Yeah.
And in this, and they're just, there's a hierarchy. So anyway, we take this little one, we pull him aside, we put him in his own little pen area, and he just loses all of his energy. He loses all of his weight. He's laying down in the
because they're social
straw.
Animals.
No, because they can't compete. They can't contend. They don't flourish. They die.
I thought you were saying you separated them.
We did separate him because we thought if we separate him, then he'll maybe eat and maybe regain his strength because the other ones were picking on him.
Yeah, but that didn't help.
Huh. And he got worse and worse and worse until finally I had to do what I had to do.
What do you think? How come he didn't improve when you separated him?
It's just too late.
Okay.
I don't even know if that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We were just kind of
learning as you go.
Yeah.
So
I had to put this animal down. And I've had to put down ducks and chickens and a kitten once and
I put down a cat once.
Oh, and
that's awful.
And the pig. It was devastating.
My wife might call me out on that. I don't know if I actually did do that with the cat. I can't remember. I just remember there was a discussion like somebody needs to put down this cat. And it was a barn cat. Like it wasn't a pet cat. But yeah.
Well, usually they take care of themselves with cats.
Usually, yeah. Like
with cats,
an owl
they
will pick it
will
off
go
or
off
something.
and die or whatever.
A hawk.
But in this case, I had to with the cat, and I just bawl like a baby. You know what I mean? I just don't even to put it out of its misery. A chicken, if you die or you pass out, and you not die, but if you pass out and you're still alive and you're in their area, they'll start to eat you. They don't care about you.
I mean, I've been told that about cats. But
well, and yeah, I'm just making the point that it doesn't bother me as much with a chicken.
Sure.
And then, like, if a chicken breaks its leg, your options are to allow the chicken to heal. You can tape its little leg up, put a cast on it, sign the cast, show it to all its friends, or you can put the thing down.
Yeah.
Because it's never going to get better. You can let it run around with a broken leg the rest of its life. That could work. But chickens can live a while.
Yeah.
You know? So
without their heads, from what I hear.
Without their heads even. Yeah. So this is the grossest episode ever. Anyway, so I've had to do that. I don't like putting animals down. I just can't. It's just not in me, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was just devastating. Like and then at that point, when I had to put that pig down, after that, I was like, farm life is just not for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really is a matter of necessity. I'm very interested in being prepared. I like preparedness. I like being financially astute and preparing in that way. I like thinking about the future and you know, thinking about what all the best things to do in the event that all this abundant blessing was to go, you know, as it does for so many other countries. You know, they make critical errors and that goes away, and then you have to fend for yourself, or you have to, you know, harder times have been in the past than there are now for sure.
Yeah.
You know, so I like that kind of thing, but just to do the dirty work, I just, you know what I mean? I don't know if anybody, I think probably that's the way it is for most people. It's just most people can tough it out. You know what I mean? Like if like Sheila had rabbits when they were kids and stuff like that, and she used to have to go get the rabbit and take it to her dad so her dad could do the deed, you know, to clean him and stuff like that. And
I think
it's just devastating.
I think it becomes, I know what you're saying, like with the difficulty in ending animal's life. I want to say, of course, this is just me assuming here. I want to say that if back in the day when animals was more people's livelihood, like they were more dependent upon them, I feel like you could get past those feelings in the sense of, if I don't do this, this could harm my livelihood. And you just see it in that perspective. Whereas we're not dependent upon that anymore because we got grocery stores on every corner. And so there's a little less of that to be able to tip the scales for it to be easier for us to do.
Yeah.
For the average person.
Well, it's like you were saying in the beginning, like the less prepared we are, the more dependent we're going to be on the system.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I think to some degree, like, you know, I think we talked about this in that episode about being a man, but I was talking about how there was a quote from Jordan Peterson about every guy should have the ability to tap into just this monster if he needs to be able to protect people, to defend his family, all that kind of stuff. But obviously unrestrained, that wreaks havoc in our society, and we see that, you know, mass shootings and all that kind of stuff when men just go off the wall. But it's subdued strength that men should have. I think that's also like what we're seeing today is a society of people who, if you know, everything hits the fan tomorrow, and we're all like living off the land and stuff, like vast majority of people aren't making it. And I think just like what Jordan Peterson said about being a man, I think as a person, just people in general, should be capable of doing way more than they can do in case they need it. And they should be able to continue passing that down to their children and their children to make people as prepared as you can. You can't prepare for everything, but that's also not a cop-out for just not knowing how to do certain things. And there is a little bit of community that needs to happen. Like, that's why you should be involved in a good church, because you can't do everything. Nobody can be entirely self-sufficient. I mean, number one, that's why we need God, but I think it's also why we need each other. So
right. Well, there's spiritual preparedness.
Yep.
There's financial preparedness. There is physical preparedness. You know, and all this kind of stuff comes
survival preparedness.
Survival, yeah, like knowing how to sort of like stitch up a wound, or you know, that was one of the things that through all that time, I don't know if I said it while the recording was going, but when COVID happened and they kind of turned on us, I sort of like delved into all the different types of preparedness. And one of the things was like, how much first aid do you really know? You know what I mean? If you cut your toe off, do you know how to?
Oh yeah.
You know, if you broke your arm, what would you do? And it's like, I would cry. And that's my first step is cry. Then
say goodbye to my loved ones.
Amputate right here. Yeah. No, I mean I would make do or whatever, but like just basic first aid, was another thing. It was like how to store food so it doesn't get broke into, and all this kind of stuff, like
how to store things safely. Like I think a ton of people would die off just with like trying to do things but not doing them the right way and contaminating things and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yep, and I'm sure that we could. I mean, there are, and that's what I was getting at was while I was doing the gardening, I had a lot of time to listen to podcasts, and that's when I started picking up podcasts, being interested in podcasts, and so I'd listen to Preparedness podcasts, and they've ranged from like people who want to do home gardens to people who are talking about complete societal collapse. So yeah. Anyway, so the moral of the story is be prepared.
Yep. Be prepared. This lesson must be shared.
Thank you for listening to the Life and Faith podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review on your favorite platform, and sharing it with friends and family. Your support helps us continue spreading the gospel of faith, hope, and love. Connect with us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many others to stay updated on our latest episodes. See the link in the show notes for all our social media channels. And until next time, it is our hope you'll commit yourself to an even deeper life and faith.